2023 is officially underway. Call to order. The first thing we'll do is introduce ourselves. And I will go ahead and do that first since I'm already talking. My name is Julie Johnson. I am the Preservation Commission chairperson. I am the Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large. Larry.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect. I was nominated by Street Colorado.
Hi, I'm Erin Hummel. I'm a landscape architect, and I was nominated by the American Society of Landscape Architects.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect and was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Hi, I'm George Dennis, retired law enforcement nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Graham Johnson, just didn't think of time of the project manager nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
And I'm Jessie White, landmark staff.
All right, thanks, everybody. So first of all, we have the meeting records for approval, but there weren't any this time, so we'll move on. And to the public comment period. Before every meeting, we like to reserve a few minutes for people from the public to comment on historic preservation in general. Not on a specific project, but in general, if anybody online with us or in person with us would like to comment on historic preservation in Denver in general, now is the time to do so. Please let us know, and we'll have 2 minutes to do so. Anybody here? All right, it doesn't look like we have anyone that wishes to make a public comment. So let's go ahead and talk, or look at the consent agenda. These are routine, I'm sorry, I always forget the audio tips with virtual participants. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, or even tablet. The audio settings to bring up an additional menu and background noise suppression. Test your speaker and microphone, adjust the maximum output volumes. For presenters or public commenters online, when you're virtual, when it is your turn to speak, to mute or unmute, you can click on the little microphone icon on your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options. Select your speaker and microphone devices. Test your microphone and speakers, adjust the maximum output volumes. And if you still have audio challenges, switch to your phone for audio, because that works sometimes too. Alrighty, then we will proceed to the consent agenda. These are routine items. Routine design review items, which meet the design guidelines and are recommended for commission approval without discussion. Any commission member can request that an item on the consent agenda move to the design review agenda. First of all, I will go ahead and read the items, and the first is 2021-COA-502 and 3717 Decatur Street in the Potter Highlands. Second is 2023-COA-211 at 2635 West 33rd Avenue in Potter Highlands. And the last is 2023-COA-215 at 2724 Curtis Street in Curtis Park. First of all, commissioners, are there any conflicts of interest in anything that needs to be done? Okay. Any concerns with the consent agenda? Anybody want to pull anything off? No?
I had some questions about the 2635 West 33rd.
Okay.
The masonry treatment. That one.
West 33rd. Okay, so that's Crystal's project. Did you want to pull it off the consent agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the questions, and this is maybe Crystal, in looking at the photos and, before and after and the stucco removal, the staff report mentions that the the intended repair for that brick, which has been damaged, was a brick smear. And the plans note that, it was a masonry wash. I guess I was just curious to learn whether any of that had happened yet. It looks like it hasn't. And that as a treatment is just a new thing. Curious to kind of chat through that.
I had exactly the same question.
Well, why don't we just pull it off?
Yeah, I think so.
Agenda then? Okay.
Perfect. Unless it's already happened, at which point it's kind of
I think it started it.
okay.
I think the photo they provided was that estimate putting it on. And so I didn't have more information to make use. So if you have more questions or leave to the applicant. So you can pull it.
Then I'd like to ask those questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. So we will pull 2023-COA-211 2635 West 33rd Avenue, and then that'll be our first design review project when we start that. So now we're looking at 3717 Decatur Street and 2724 Curtis Street for the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Yes,
Since you've already given the addresses. Correct.
Correct.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the two items that are still on the consent agenda.
thank you, Ann. Second,
Second.
Larry, thank you for seconding. All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. All right, the two items on the consent agenda have been approved. If you are from one of those projects, then you're free to continue to join us, or you can leave the meeting if you wish. So now we will go to the design review projects, and since 2023-COA-211 was on the consent agenda, that'll be the first one that we review today. Crystal, did you want to take that away?
Okay, thanks. So this is for 2635 West 33rd Avenue. This is for a small one-story addition and some alterations to an existing contributing structure in the Potter Highlands Historic District. Some of the changes to the house are to repair existing brick areas on the contributing structure. The applicant is proposing to use a brick smear that they put over the brick facade and add new AC condensers and a new rear sunken patio and side concrete patio with fire pit to the site. They will also be altering and repairing the front porch, adding new handrails, repairing and painting the front window and door. At the east elevation is that one-story side addition, new egress windows and wells, cedars shingle siding will be replaced at the second floor. At the rear, they will also be repairing and painting existing wood trim. There are some windows that are being replaced due to damage. And the applicant has included everything in the packet that I have information on. So the applicant can elaborate on questions the commissioners may have.
All right, commissioners, any questions for Crystal?
I think short of maybe chatting through the preservation treatment with the applicants.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Actually, can I just ask a question? If you
Sure.
answer that. I agree with Graham. I've never seen the term brick smear. And is it something that the staff has dealt with before? Because I don't believe that we have ever seen it.
I haven't seen it very often. I did look it up. It looks like something that is commonly used, but more as like a wash. So I'm not sure how it is repair wise, and I'm not sure if other staff members have seen it. But that's kind of what I could find online. So because the applicants had already removed the stucco and the brick is at the state it is, and it was in a, from what I could tell, pretty bad condition from photos that we'd had, it seemed like anything that would cover that would help at this point. So maybe they can elaborate more on the detail of it. Yeah.
Great, all right. If there aren't any other questions for staff, do we have our applicant with us to it?
Cameron, you should be able to unmute and turn your camera on now.
Hello, can
Hi.
everyone hear me? Hi.
Yeah, we
All
can
right.
hear you. Please give us,
Hello.
you've got 10 minutes to tell us about your project. And before you begin, please give your name and your address for our records.
All right. My name is Cameron Kruger. I'm the architect on the project. I live at 30 South Utica Street, 80219. So yeah, this project, just kind of focusing on your specific comments on the brick smear. This project had very significant structural damage. There's walls of brick delaminating from the at the corners, and so we put a lot of structural steel bars in the grout joints to reinforce all that. And another problem with it is the brick face had delaminated. You could tell there's some significant freeze thaw damage, probably caused by the stucco applied over the front of it. And so there's also these tiny pins, like every, depending on which facade you're on, every 6 inches to 4 inches to 12 inches on center. So the face of these bricks had very significant damage, and there's really no way to repair it without it just over time getting more and more damaged from the freeze thaw cycle getting inside the existing cracks. So the owner worked with the contractor to apply this brick smear, which was a similar color to the existing brick, and the idea was to maintain the look of the brick, still be able to read the grout lines and things like that, without having to completely recover the whole thing with like a new stucco or something like that. Yeah, and I'm not sure if you guys want me to expand on the other parts of the project or mainly just that element.
Well, anything that you wanted to tell us would be good, but other than, the commission can ask questions too, so. Okay, that's.
Yeah.
That's talk about it. All right, okay, commissioners, for questions for the applicant then.
Maybe the first question is with the mock-up that was done, do you know what kind of material was used, to create the
Yeah.
smear?
Yes, it's a Solomon. It's called brick red color. It's a grout material.
Yeah, I think the makeup of that grout, I guess the concern, these brick appear to have really thin butter joints, which probably means they're hard pressed brick, right? I'm looking at Gary, or a soft mud brick, but it could be delicate. I guess my concern from the outset was that, applying a thin surface over these might be more harmful instead of beneficial. And so I was curious about what was being used, to create the smear. I think the color match, I did some research too, like Crystal said, and I've certainly seen this effect, more as something that's applied for an aesthetic, as opposed to like a stabilization or preservation treatment approach. And so
Sure.
didn't understand about all of that.
Yeah. And so the idea for this was mainly to just get that facade back together. So the smear is not the structural aspect. That was done through the steel reinforcing and new grout and some replacement of very damaged bricks. This is more of just to get a new finish on there without recovering it with that thick stucco material.
Are the joints being cut out at all before, or is this truly just being applied over the face?
This is applied over the face. The joints were reinforced in a previous phase before the covering.
Yeah, I understand the helical ties. And,
Yeah.
I guess in talking about it, Solomon, of course, makes a lot of colors. Davis does as well. Colors that get used in concrete and mortars in grout, and whether that was like a lime mortar that was used or a hard Portland grout that had been colored. Just, I guess, cautious that, this is potentially a big shell that might just eject itself from the building at some point.
I am not familiar with the exact makeup, like the percentages of, lime and mortar and the exact product they used for this.
Fair enough. I mean, it's a difficult preservation issue. And I'd be curious to hear what other commissioners think too.
I guess is.
And I'd like to refer back to the existing condition too. Don't know if you have the set, but the last page shows that particular facade and the current condition.
Yes.
And it's, it's there's been the front facades actually had like 3 layers of work done. There's the existing brick layer, and then they've covered it with some sort of stucco and then painted white lines to look like brick, and then they added the exposed granulated stucco on top of that. So it's really just a mess right now. So
Well, my question is this, is the material that's applied to the brick, is it a proprietary product or is it a home brew where the mason mixes some of this and some of that to come up with the right consistency? And I guess if that's the case, what is the some of this and some of that, other than the Sullivan color? Is it
right,
mostly
yeah.
lime? Is it mostly Portland cement? Is there latex in it? Just what is the composition of the material that's being applied?
Yeah, sure. I'd have to get back to you on the exact composition, just to make sure I don't get that incorrect.
In addition, to the masonry contractor who's applying this, someone who's applied this before with a track record?
I'll have to talk to the general contractor about that as well. I'm not sure about his sub's previous history.
Any other comments?
I mean, I think that the approach to protecting brick that has lost the hard base and is susceptible to weathering is often covered with something that's compatible like stucco, but in this case, it feels like the stucco that was removed, which was installed in a way that did damage, coming back with something that's this thin, I guess, an experience in the field, anything that's applied thinly doesn't tend to weather well, very much depending on the interaction between the substrate and what's being applied to it. But if protection of the brick is the #1 goal now that the walls have been stabilized with helical ties and some of the other measures that you've described. The reason for my questions and caution are just that the treatment being proposed feels like it may be a short-term fix that could result in more extenuated long-term damage, whereas a traditional cementitious stucco that would still breathe similarly to the masonry might protect it and be more durable. It's not our job to design, but just wanted to be cautious about what an aesthetic treatment might do to the long-term stability, especially with so much efforts going into trying to stabilize it and save the house. So certainly not trying to be critical or
no, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And there's and the way we saw it was that the thick material trapped the moisture back there, and the idea is that this will let that really that kind of low quality brick. If you go out there, you can see some of these bricks are not, they're kind of curved and arched and all these things. You can the idea is that this would at least allow them to breathe and let that water dry out, instead of just letting it trap back there like it did in the past.
So what do you think the best way to go forward is? Because he can come back with more information so we can be more comfortable.
I think we should get more information that we continue this.
Yeah.
How we have to go into deliberations first, because we're still in question mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right, I'm sorry. Any other questions? Okay, then let's go into, oh, are there any comments from the public? Yeah.
I think you gotta ask them.
Any comments to anybody out there in virtual world or in here would like to comment?
No hands raised.
No, okay, great. All right, then let us go into deliberation. Sorry about that, Anne. Thank you for reminding me. So I hear the suggestion of continuation, and that means we choose a date certain, is that correct?
Mhm.
And did you have something else?
Well, I think maybe we need to be really clear about what it is we're asking
Yeah,
for.
And I guess one of the things I wanted to ask about is, it seems to me like based on what the applicant has said about the purpose of this, the brick has been structurally stabilized. And so I guess, are we looking at this almost in the same way that we would look if that applicant was proposing painting an existing unpainted brick facade, and we're just asking if this is inappropriate?
We don't review applied color, but we would stucco, because it's an integral.
Well, I guess that's where I kind of wonder, like, because painting unpainted brick wouldn't be about reviewing the color of it, but about reviewing whether this is an appropriate
It's-
light preservation.
It's whether or not it requires a building or zoning permit. That's what triggers our review as well. And stucco, the application of the stucco material would require a permit. The application of paint does not.
So then I guess, yeah, is
That's
this
a good-
paint or is this?
Yeah, no, that's the question, Larry. It felt to me like this was something that all the guidelines reference often, whether it's windows or siding and trim material, that we're looking at durable architectural materials. And I think that the brick in being compromised but being repaired, it seems like there's some risk with this smear, and again, having not ever seen it in almost a couple decades worth of looking at similar kind of work, it was new to me, it was interesting, and when I saw the pictures of other, I don't know what that looks like, but to a certain extent, it also moved into territory with materials that we haven't approved in the past. I feel like that were tumbled or, artificially historicized or antiqued. Not that that's the intention here, is to protect the building. And so it seems to kind of weave through a few guidelines of, is this a durable material? Is this an appropriate preservation treatment that's lasting? And I think the red smear, as opposed to a white, was, seemed like it was pretty typical that it was a whitewash or kind of a highlighting effect that was used architecturally in other case studies. So certainly don't want to overcomplicate it. Just felt like a lot of effort was going to stabilize this building and restore it, that coating it with something that might do long-term damage or continuing damage is worth investigating.
And I think,
I'd like to just ask a sort of a layman question on this. I understand that there is also a process, or that there might be a process of just taking the brick out, turning it around so its best faces forward. Has that ever been done?
It's incredibly labor intensive and costly. So, I mean, you could turn the house brick by brick. It's usually not a full facade preservation treatment, but it's been done, certainly.
It's been done, okay.
And I don't know that it would be under the purview of this commission to recommend that or require that, but that's something that is a preservation treatment that exists for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
the thing I'm concerned about, because it appears to be a cementitious material, which, and it's a pigmented cementitious material, that the actual color is gonna vary depending on the water cement ratio.
It will fade.
And well, it could fade and could be, and the result could be very blotchy. Especially if it's kind of like a field mixed applied material. And if the intent is cosmetic and to some degree protective, a breathable masonry coating might be the appropriate thing to do. A manufactured material, one that's intended to be applied over brick. From the quick look at some of the examples that I saw, it's more typically white, and it's more typically to some almost create an antique appearance where you have, some white, some not, kind of that kind of character. And breathable masonry coatings have been applied on masonry that is very porous and susceptible to weather damage. Not that I'm suggesting that necessarily, but I'm saying that it's perhaps a better approach to solve the problem if the applicant can't demonstrate why this particular, brick smear is appropriate, has a track record, and is being applied by someone who's had significant experience with them.
Yeah, I'd love to learn about it if it's something.
Yeah.
It doesn't, offhand, it doesn't sound like an appropriate preservation practice.
I think that was the initial concern. I agree with you.
So, yeah,
And I guess going back to it, I just have a problem with the terminology is amongst us, I don't know, have any of us run into this term before? And we
Or
have.
for bagels.
Exactly, that's why I wasn't sure if there was age there. But I think because of that, because collectively, we probably have like 200 years of masonry experience. It's not it's not actually a masonry term and my guess is that there is a masonry term that covers whatever this is. And this sort of gets to Gary's point. If there should be it's some kind of a coating, I'm assuming, but that in the continuance, I would like to actually know what the term was, because that would give us some idea about what the specification of it is, and the duration of the specification. I just think you need this term maybe is not helping the condition.
it's clumsy at best.
Yeah, by the way, I also just want to say, kudos to the applicant for looking at this project and restoring it because it's huge. And so we're looking at this because they have gone to such great effort to restore this house, which is a really great thing. So this is just, to me, it's sort of a terminology issue.
Okay, all right. Cameron, are you still with us?
He might be muted now.
Cameron, are you muted? Can you unmute yourself? Hello, Cameron?
Just allow him to talk for a minute. Taylor's allowing him to talk.
Hello?
Hi, Cameron.
Hello? Hi.
So,
Hi.
so we're looking at a continuance at this
Sure.
point, just to get more information on this, and I want to reiterate what Ann said about this being a fabulous project. We just want to know a little bit more information about this. We're very appreciative of the work you're doing, but we do need a little bit more information before we're totally comfortable with it. Now, continuation, there are a couple of dates. What we need to do is schedule a date certain when we make a motion to continue, a date when will be scheduled to come back and tell us about that would be part of that motion. We would need the first meeting that will be available to see you during for that will be July 25th.
Okay.
We would to see your information be submitted to Crystal by July 13th. Would that be possible?
All right. I believe so. Yes.
Could we potentially do it sooner? I'm gonna be out the 25th. So if he could get us information for the July 11th meeting, that would be preferable, but I don't know if they can, so that Cameron would have to let us know.
What's the deadline for July 11th?
It's already passed.
Right, that deadline has already passed, but
Do you have the,
if you could get us information on this by this weekend, then I could
Sure.
still get the staff report together and get this on the July 11th meeting.
space on the July 11th?
All right. That sounds like a plan.
Well, if they have enough information that they think it's something that could be on consent, it might be fine, or they could just pull it off if they don't have enough or they don't agree with the treatment.
I'm asking if there's enough space on that agenda.
Yeah, I'm saying that it could be on consent, but they could pull it, so there isn't enough design review space, but maybe we can fit it in.
So, and if I could just kind of clarify what exactly are you looking for, like an ASTM spec or like something that says what, or are you just wanting the word German smear? Or I'm still a little confused by what exactly I need to provide.
Well, if you could provide what materials are in the smear, what the proportion of those materials.
Okay.
And what experience the subcontractor or applicator has had with this material that has successfully performed in the past with examples. I think that's what would help alleviate our concerns.
All right.
A photo camera in the packet that has what appears to be their bags of concrete or perhaps mason's mix. It's hard to see.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, yeah, and I just want to make sure I get that exact spec on what they used there.
That will help us, I think, understand the intention and the compatibility. So we appreciate that.
Sure. All right, sounds good.
Second, we're trying to see if we can fit you in for the July review meeting. Hang on.
Okay.
If you can't get the information by then, you could be on the 25th. That's fine. I just won't be here to present it. So it's up to you kind of if you can get that information.
Yeah,
quick.
I'll definitely try and get that done
Right.
as soon as we can here.
Okay, so actually, let's go ahead and put you, I'm sorry to do this, Karen, but let's put you on the July 25th, which would be July 13th, and then staff can mark it, Chris, we can work that out here. And we're just not, we can't, for some reason, the computers aren't pulling up July 11 meeting yet, so. If you could have July information to us by July 13th, that would be great, and then you'll be on the July 25th documents. If that's
All right.
agreeable with you, we'll go ahead and we'll ask for a motion. Does that work for you, Kevin?
That sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, do I hear a motion from the commission, the date certain July 25th?
I pull this one off, I guess. So I will give you application number 2023 COA 211 and 2635 West 33rd Avenue to date certain of July 25th.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, George has seconded the motion. All in favor, aye? Aye. Nay? All right, Cameron, we will see you on July 25th.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you very much for your patience, and again, thank you for such great work on that project. Thanks, Crystal. All right, the next design review project is 2023 COA 219 155 Humboldt Street in the Country Club District, and Brittany is the staff person that we were the staff person. Yes, you can
Present this, give me 1 second. Sure what it is.
slide.
Okay, so this is 155 Humboldt Street. The applicant is requesting a large rear addition on an existing, sorry, go over to the correct one. Okay, this is 155. So the applicant is requesting a large 1-story addition at the rear of the existing one-story Mission Revival style structure in the Country Club Historic District. The structure is a contributing building to that district. Existing site plan for the historic structure is shown here on the screen. The original building footprint is a T-shaped design with a front building massing position with great width with a width along the street and a rear mass deeper than it is wide with a massing position to the north side of the lot. On January 10th, 2023, the commission reviewed the applicant's request to demolish over 40% of the exterior walls and roof. And at the January 10th LPC meeting, the commission denied the applicant's request to demolish that amount of the building. The addition was also denied based on the denial of the demolition of the project scope. However, the prior addition was not discussed by the commission. Since the January meeting, the applicant has revised demolition and addition scope. Several of the site elements are proposed for demolition, including an outdoor chimney, patio, and site wall. It is unclear if these elements are original. However, they would not be calculated into the contributing building demolition calculations. Here you can see the site elements proposed for demolition. And then The original attached garage is also proposed to be demolished. However, the garages are not considered contributing in the Country Club Historic District, and therefore demolition percentages for garage exterior walls and roof structure have not traditionally been included in contributing building demolition calculations. The demolition of the contributing roof structure is 39.9%. So these slides show the extent of demolition to the exterior walls. Demolition of the contributing exterior walls is 22%. And I'll move on to the next slide so you can see all four sides of the building. The prior submittal included several alterations to the historic building facade to return the facade to a more historic configuration and to replace several doors and windows. Alterations to the historic building and fabric to remain has been significantly scaled back and reduced in the revised submittal. The public hearing for demolition of this version of the application is not required. Although demolition of linear exterior walls is limited to 22%, roof demolition is below 40%. The total demolition is 19.9%, or excuse me, 19.19%. Demolition to the historic structure is extensive and will change the appearance and massing and volume of the historic structure as perceived for public vantage points. The historic structural system will compromise the structural integrity of the historic building at the rear. The character defining features of the low one-story Spanish Mission Revival architecture of the home will be significantly altered with the new addition. I'll go back so you can see those full demolition calculations again. Yeah. So the proposed site plan for the new addition shown here. With the proposed addition, the house will have a total of 3,394 square feet and a total lot coverage of 37.17%. Per the Denver zoning code, this max allowable lot coverage for this zone district USUE is 37.5%. The proposed lot coverage is less than what is allowable per zoning. However, it is 7.17% over the over what is recommended by the Country Club design guidelines. The Landmark Preservation Commission and neighborhood have approved similar size additions with similar lot coverage ratios within this district. The Country Club Design Review Commission did recommend the prior addition design, which had a coverage of 35%. Lot coverage patterns have become typical of newer development within the historic district. The commission did not review the prior additions, nor did they weigh in on lot coverage. The addition will preserve front street massing of the historic building. Addition is set back over 16 feet to preserve the front building massing. While the addition preserves front massing, it is not compatible with the scale, massing, and rhythm of the historic structure. The addition will double the size of the structure, overwhelming the original structure. The existing attached garage has a footprint of 361 square feet. The new garage will have a footprint of 565 square feet. The existing garage is 3 feet 1 inch from the side yard setback along the north property line. The new garage will have a side yard setback of 1 foot 10 3/4 inches. The historic massing at the front of the property has a north side yard setback of 4 feet 2 3/8 inch. The addition will be clad in smooth finish stucco in contrast with the rough finish stucco of the existing structure. With the placement of the addition and similar materials, it will be difficult to distinguish the original building footprint due to the alterations to the side and rear. To accommodate a new rear addition, on the south elevation, demolition of 15 feet 8 inches of the historic wall, preservation of 16 feet and 2 inches of a roof structure. On the north elevation, demolition of the garage structure, preservation of
demolition of the garage structure and preservation of 48 feet of the exterior wall, in a range of 3 foot 7.5 inch to 9 foot 1 3/4 inch of roof structure. To accommodate the proposed addition, the applicant is requesting an administrative adjustment. Staff are concerned that although the placement is at the rear side of the existing structure, negative impact to the existing structure and site has not been minimized and the proposed addition only preserves the front of the building, creating facadism in the Country Club Historic District. And staff are not supportive of the administrative adjustment request. So here is a perspective views of the proposed addition. The addition does have a support from the Country Club Architectural Design Review Commission and surrounding neighbors. However, staff are recommending denial of this addition. And as it will not have a minimal visual impact on the existing structure. While homes in the Country Club District generally do have large footprints and programming, this house is of modest scale. Additionally, the home is located in the Park Club Place subdivision of Country Club. Park Club Place development can be seen as transitional between the driving Park Historic District and the large development of the Country Club Annex. The program is not limited. The second floor addition includes 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2 walk-in closets, laundry, and an elevator. The scale of the addition visually overwhelms the scale of the simple design of the original structure. So staff is recommending.
All right, commissioners, do you have any questions for Jesse? Yeah,
I am just a little confused. The staff report, I believe, says that the RNO reviewed and approved the previous design. But it doesn't say that they reviewed this version.
So I don't know if they've seen this latest version. According to Brittany's notes, it looks like they are in support of it.
I'm just going back because in the application, I know that, and just going back to the beginning, that there are letters from the community, but Brittany emailed out earlier
An approval from them from June 15th.
oh, from the
RNO.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you.
So if the letter was dated June 15th, so
Thank
that
you.
would,
Yes,
yes, was
got
that
it.
correct
Yeah,
application?
thank you. Yes, thank you for reminding me. I see it right.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jesse? Does it look like it? Taylor, do we have our applicant with us? Is it anybody here? Okay. Oh, wait a minute, I'm making this a lot harder than it should be. Guys can go up there to speak and then you can use this and you like to.
Yeah, I brought, due to the complexity of this one, I brought some free models.
So you'll have 10 minutes to talk about your project and probably know the routine, your name and address.
So can I go step there and just come back?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just gonna turn the camera on over here.
Once I talk, then we start. Hi, John Mattingly, 517 East Bayard Avenue, Denver, 80209. Now the clock starts. I definitely put staff to task on this one. So we produced some 3D models. Most of the work we do in our office, we end up putting into Revit. When it's a renovation, we do a 3D scan first, and then it creates a full model. And I've had the privilege of designing quite a few things in this neighborhood. Up in the middle here in Lafayette. So I use some of these recent designs that I've done as context for the site. And so I think the majority of what we heard from staff to begin had to do with the overwhelming nature of the addition to the structure, and facadism is something we heard quite a bit about. And so what you're seeing behind this building, this is First Avenue right here. This is the house on the corner that faces the street, which was referred to in this lovely handbook here as a lattice mansion, because it is. And this is also going to relate to the context of the transition between driving park and country club. If you look at the Sanborn map, you'll notice that this particular block on Humboldt originally had 7 houses on it total. That's it. There's an average of 24 houses block in driving park. So there really is no reference and no bridging of the gap. This block on Humboldt is large estates. In this country club handbook, it references the house here on the corner designed by Danny as a 3.5-story mansion. And that house is actually right here on the corner of Third Avenue. So here we have this 3.5-story mansion here. This is the cottage there, which you can't see really, not only just in this model, but it's real. And then this is 145 Humboldt, where this section of the building used to be attached here to the house on the corner. And it was stated in this book that it was too large of a house, like some mansionly reference. And so the developer bought this and moved it over here and made it its own lot. Then I had the good fortune of tearing off what that developer did and designed all of this, and now it's there today. It's lovely. So in any event, on this side of the street, there's the building on the corner here at 180 is described as the 3rd floor having 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. Not the 2nd floor, but the 3rd floor. And so we're dealing with, this is described as a 3.5-story mansion because it is. And this site was developed in 1966, I believe. It was vacant lot. It was actually part of the site here. Here we have 140 Humboldt, which was sort of a Georgian revival style home that we are now restoring, which is fantastic. And did this addition that's on it at the moment in 120, which is another Jacques Benedict house at Distinction. It was originally facing the country club. There is another large mansion on the corner. So the context of this area is big. It's not driving park. And it's a very unique space. And so this little house was somebody's summer cottage. And you can see when I take this off, I'll show that to you in a second. It was placed here as someone's summer cottage. And so the complexity of this project is that it sits clear back here. I'm going to move this now. This house at 140 Lafayette is a new house that we did. And I put it here because this block from this side alley to the street at one point was one single house in Park Club Place. So this context is large scale, not small. And these houses were built in the 80s. I had the privilege of tearing down one that I did not like much. And we put this house here, which on a side note does have a mortar smear on it. So just a light application of the mortar over the frame. But nonetheless. So as it relates to facadism, what I don't understand is this in white is the original house. And you can completely see it. It is a parapet wall building at 18 feet tall from here, 18 feet. We're 30 inches above the sidewalk, not to include the curb. When you're standing here, you can barely see past this. There's nowhere else to go. You can see how extreme the setback is. And so from a facadism perspective and the key contributing features, I haven't touched any of them except for this one section of the wall in this area back here, which is currently covered by a garage. We're absolutely not touching these parapet walls, which are the defining features, and therefore the roof of this building. The roof that we're getting rid of is inside of this parapet. So we're rising up from inside of it, different from my previous approval, which was this. This was what was denied. We had a big, larger block on the back of the building and covered up this side. Here, we left this visual from the other side simply because it can be seen from over here. This, there's no view of it with this building there, but we still preserve this much. And so, as it relates to the demolition, is coming up out of the center of this building. And I think we've done a wonderful job of preserving the entire integrity of this building. There'll be a transition in the form here. You can see that the way I did this parapet is very simple compared to what you're seeing here. So I think that the definition between the historic building and what's here is very obvious. And we have nowhere else to go with this thing if it is so far back. And we can't come straight up here or else it would be facadism. And in this case, it isn't. And so, and to differentiate the massing, more like the front volume instead of this block that I once did, more like a turtle. We took this and the massing is more like the volume itself, you know, so I went more rectangular this time and kept it inside of the parapet walls of the original building to honor more of that linear, you know, the original front volume. So what I did here was try to create something in form. It was more like this, albeit it's obviously new construction. It's still honoring the initial shape, rectangularity of the historic building. So there was nowhere else to go with that, but back here. And so there's a comment in here about average lot sizes being 50 feet on this block. I think they're closer to 110. So the context, and I think that's why we have support from this neighbor, this neighbor, this neighbor, this neighbor, that neighbor, that one, and that one, is it's a very gentle, low addition. It's only 3 feet taller here than it is there. And although you can see it now, perceptibility of it is almost zero. So I think we've done a nice job preserving the historic context of this structure, not just the front facade, but the entire volume of it, by nestling this thing within the parapet walls and then respecting those with simpler parapet form design on the roof. And again, had it not been on this block with much larger homes than this one, then the context I think would be pushing the boundaries. But in this particular case, I think the addition gets done and it still goes unnoticed unless you're on the site recognizing the chain and parapets on the new building. So that's how we got here, and I have enjoyed building my little village. So with the 3D printer broke along the way, but here it is. So thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Johnson?
The only friendly comment I'll make is infill construction on the Shamir. I understand, appreciate you pointing that out. Looking at preservation stuff, so if we're playing that game, I just wanted to make the comment for the record.
No other questions for John? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, are there any public comments? Anyone here or anyone online or virtual who would like to make a public comment on this project? No, raised. No hands raised? Okay, great. All righty. All right, commissioners, before we deliberate, any other questions for staff? All right, I see none, so let's go ahead and deliberate. People, what do you think?
This is the most complete analysis that we've seen in a long time. Thank you for all of that. There's not only in writing, but to have physical models helpful. So that helps to at least make this easier to digest.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the challenges of this project because the existing house is much smaller in scale than certainly most of what's on this block, and the broader context of the country club, it presents a lot of challenges. I think the unfortunate difficulty for the homeowners and the architect is that you've got to deal with what you got from a historic preservation standpoint. And to me, this addition, I mean, I agree with the staff report, and the addition reminds me a lot of the kind of diagram in the guidelines under section is 3.11 on page 75. There are these like little SketchUp diagrams that one of them shows incompatible 2-story rear addition, and it's a similar kind of overwhelming scale, even though it's set back from the front facade of the house and maybe respects the kind of architectural language, just the scale of it is so overwhelming compared to the original house. And I think this pretty clearly is one of those kinds of proposals.
Anybody else, George?
Well, I spent good 40 minutes or so walking around the property there. And with the plan, trying to visualize what was going to be done. It's hard to visualize because there is so much vegetation in there, trees, shrubbery, both from the adjoining properties and front and back. So my first concern is how much demolition to this landscape is going to happen if this addition is approved. And it occurred to me that the more vegetation that's moved, the more obvious it's going to become that this is a really large addition. And the house we're talking about is a Mission Revival, single story, very familiar with that style. And I think the design as proposed, and as it becomes more visible, especially in the wintertime, would look more and more out of place. I don't think it meets the guideline for the rhythm and flow of the rest of the neighborhood, simply because if I'm looking at emission revival, I'm really not that concerned with the style of the houses adjoining or across the street. It's this one. How are we going to keep this one within bounds? And I haven't seen it yet.
Gary, I see you taking notes.
I haven't taken any yet. I guess I'm struggling with this. I mean, on one hand, the size of the addition is not subordinate to the existing historical building. On the other hand, this is a neighborhood of large houses. And so what I'm struggling with is the loss of scale, which will occur by converting a small house into a large house. The sufficient trade-off for the proposed addition. I think proposed addition actually, this idea of differentiating new from old is it's sometimes taken to extremes. And in some cases, I believe a closer replication than an exact replication is appropriate depending on the context. So I guess I'm not as bothered by the problem with the inability to distinguish the addition from the original house. It's more about the loss of this little gem in a neighborhood of much larger buildings and a neighborhood of some new construction. So it's like, it's a context question for me. And I kind of think I haven't made up my mind. I'd like to hear what other people are saying.
Actually, I had a similar thought, but I just wanted to ask a question first. I'm not sure that I understand what the administrative adjustment is that's being requested. Can you tell me what that is?
So the administrative adjustment can be applied for, people for certain things like, lot coverage, setbacks, height of plane are generally what we, but the AA, and this is to accommodate the proposed rear addition applicant requesting an AA. Staff concerns are concerned that although the placement is at the rear and side of the existing structure, the negative impact of the existing structure, meaning the amount of demolition that's happening and the scale of the addition, doesn't necessarily preserve the whole front of the building. It's just creating this facadism effect is what she's saying in her notes here, and that we wouldn't be supportive of it. So
I'm sorry, but what is the actual administrative adjustment? That
Why is
being
it necessary?
Why is it necessary?
So I'll let the applicant answer
Yes.
what they're requesting the AA.
Yeah, is it it's a bulk plane?
Because
deal?
we can't build 2 stories here.
Uh-huh.
And we can't go off the side.
Yeah.
Due to landmark guidelines.
Uh-huh.
The only thing we can do is come behind it, and this area is behind it. And it's in the rear bulk plane. This area is in it.
It's in the, so it's the rear
It's the
bulk
rear
plane.
bulk plane and setback because I can't go off
Okay.
the side. I'm only going
Okay.
off the side.
So it's a bulk plane.
So, the way AAs work is that, we typically, are supportive of AAs, or the commission has been supportive of AAs. If they, if conformance with the zoning code prevents the application from being, more sympathetic to the context.
So this is actually very much in, the reason I'm asking has a lot to do with with Gary's question. And I think this is a very unusual neighborhood. I'm always a little bit torn with the guidelines. And I remember asking at the, when we had our gathering, I remember what it's called, at the beginning, in the, how do you rank the various guidelines? And I remember this is, it was our retreat, that the guideline that comes up first is actually the neighborhood guideline, that actually supersedes the general ones we have. And in country club, we've often, I think, had this issue where there are things that happen in country club that would not be allowed in other parts. So this sort of gets to Gary's issue, Gary's question, which is in this neighborhood, there are a lot of really large houses, and there are a lot of houses that have been added on to multiple times during the during the period of significance. You sort of see a lot of things, and I think that this sort of gets to Gary's idea that sometimes just the act of having the addition is actually part of what this neighborhood's all about, lots of these houses. So I also agree that I think it would be more successful if the new construction was more sympathetic and not try to differentiate itself. That's one of my things. And the other thing is that the neighborhood that the RNO approved this. They live in the neighborhood and everybody in the community looked at it and said, this is great, which is sort of interesting to me because it's so much bigger than the original house. But I think you have to give weight to that. In this neighborhood, they all looked at it and they said, this is fine. Where I have a problem is when it gets to the floodplain, because that's a zoning issue and that goes for the entire neighborhood. And that in some ways is, I don't want to say outside of our purview, but that is actually something that has been set up sort of by sort of citywide. And so I would be more sympathetic to this, but not sympathetic to the administrative adjustment, because I think that is the thing that goes to everybody in the city to say, this is how we're regulating the size of things. But to me, if they can do it within the, if they could do it without the administrative adjustment and the neighborhood wants to do it, I would say, I could support Jessica.
But they do need.
Yes, I'm saying, I'm just laying out my thought on it, I wouldn't, you just wouldn't have.
Larry,
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a funny thing, and I think it ties into what is my concern, I guess, about the proposed addition. So I actually like the idea of the, if this needs to be 2 stories to fit in the program that the owners want. I like the idea that the 2 stories section of it is pushed as far to the rear as possible. And if that's against the, blanket zoning requirement, then I would actually personally, I feel like that's worth supporting in this particular case, owing to the kind of character of the main house. What concerns me about this really is the part of the 2nd story that kind of creeps out over the mass of the kind of it basically creeps out over the entire mass of the sort of T rear section of the house. And that's where, to me, it feels like it starts to really overwhelm the house and kind of blur the line in a way that, in terms of Gary's comment about differentiation, I think that that would, I don't know, help differentiate the addition from the front if it were, not creeping out over that.
Just to clarify, you mean this, the 2-story part where there's like a porte cochere with the 2nd floor?
Not that part. I'm talking
that
about,
piece there.
more in the middle, and then, the 2-story part with the porte cochere is maybe also a little bit contributes to the sense of hugeness of it, but I think I could more accept that and feel that it's reasonably subordinate to the main structure in the context of country club if that other part weren't projecting so far forward.
I think, and maybe to add on to your comment, and I'm in the same camp of, this is a really nice project. This is obviously it's a big project. It's an investment someone's making here. And I think that the country club design guidelines are a unique element to this, and the building being sort of an outlier in that typical style for the neighborhood compounds the challenge. So if we say that in a hierarchy of, contextual weight, right, and decision making here, that a neighborhood, we talked a lot during the applicant's presentation about, I think, design guideline 3.3, which says to design an addition with respect to the character defining features, and it goes in the order of historic district, surrounding historic context, and historic primary structure. It seems backwards to me that, in the decision about a specific building, the building itself is a primary consideration. The immediate context, which would be the neighbors, this block of Humboldt that we discussed, and then the country club district versus any sort of bleed into driving park. And so I think the challenge here is that as an addition, the size, the program, it doesn't seem out of place at the country club. But I think that it clearly doesn't, speak to guideline 3.9, which talks about being subordinate to an existing structure. And I think in spite of, by the letter of not being subordinate because of size, it's also really clear that the applicant, looking at the sheet here, L-017, there's two really, I think, descriptive isometric views showing the previous submittal that we saw. Kind of the turtle approach that was described versus this rising out of the parapets, right? But I think what that does, there was square footage that was moved around and creating that recess kind of speaks to the T layering that you mentioned is missing or is captured, still by the second floor addition. There was that projection that did come out in the front, which is gone. So I think it feels like just about everything that can be done to respect, what is left of that footprint and the size of the front of the lot here for the original structure has been done. And I feel like in spite of that, it may meet best intentions and it may meet kind of a neighborhood style. And I feel like the wrestling point here, which this doesn't push us forward, unfortunately, because I'm not offering a resolute, but to say that it clearly doesn't meet certain guidelines, well, neighborhood guidelines, which are slightly different, especially in the context of this scale, I think makes this a challenge. The vegetation piece, George, you mentioned, that is very much true, but I always have to remind ourselves, I think that we're looking at this in a vacuum, as if that wasn't permanent. And so while it does obscure now, and that was a comment made by another commissioner too, that, are seasonal, right, for visibility, so.
Puncture the vacuum here.
Yeah, well, but legally, you have to do that. I think Adam has to remind us that we are looking at this in a vacuum. Landscaping and vegetation is not part of our decision, in spite of the heavy presence here. Hopefully I'm correct there, Adam. So I don't know if that helps. That was my comment. But I would squarely put myself in the unsure category because of this.
Well, plus this, smaller house is part of telling the story of that particular subdivision. If you make it not a smaller house, then that piece of the story goes away. And if you want to see the progression of big to ginormous, then there has to be something in the middle, and taking that out would, I'm sure the neighbors are all for it, but that's a present day context. That's not looking back at what was this. And in looking at the property, I thought it was, pretty charming as it was. But that's not what we're here to decide. And so I think it's taking a piece of the story out to want more room, have to do it within context, and I don't think this is doing it, so there I am.
Brett?
Maybe to reframe a different question, and again, this is not in the interest of trying to move forward with design input or anything, but the scale, the subordinates, the overcoming of the original structure, this kind of the same footprint, the same size, but obviously it's a major programmatic change to consider a one-story addition, which is one of the things that the guidelines say. And that throws us way into a different lane here, but in spite of all of these things, I don't know if that's, thinking about what happens from this point forward, right? I mean, there's been a lot of energy, a lot of iteration that's gone into what we're looking at. And are we ultimately saying that this is too big, that 2 stories doesn't make sense for a single-story house in this context? Because of the way we're seeing the country club design guidelines fighting with the individual structure input, or is there a path forward there with this size and this context and this original building based on what others are seeing?
So those of you that are unsure, what would make you feel sure?
Well, part of my reluctance to say, yes, this is approvable. Is that if. An addition of this size was. Proposed for an existing building of this size. In another district. Where the original buildings are bungalow. And say no. That's. That would clearly be. Inconsistent with the guidelines and have a look at the neighborhood character. The fact that this is the country club neighborhood kind of makes that a little bit different. And I guess I'm struggling with, should it make it different?
What would help you feel better about that?
If I want to see it all out. Well, I mean, because it's the country club, it's a different environment, not only architecturally, but culturally, financially, you know, and things are possible there that aren't possible anywhere else. And I'm not talking about from a preservation perspective there. And so my struggle is why in a neighborhood of privilege should something be allowable that wouldn't be allowable in another neighborhood? Large addition to a small, architecturally significant building. Even though, you know, I in looking at how the proposed addition fits with the existing buildings and fits in the neighborhood, I think it's a good fit. Question is, does that good fit comply with the guidelines enough to say that we should approve this? And how is that consistent with our other decisions in other historic districts where we're talking about different architectural contexts, different neighborhood contexts, different architectural styles?
Can I quickly bring up, since we were talking about the kind of exceptionalism of country club a bit here, so in the actual country club guidelines, section B7, siding of additions is actually pretty short. It says additions should be sited at the rear or side of the structure to minimize negative impact on the important features of the site or structure. See the general guidelines for additional information. So it largely refers to the general guidelines. So I think in terms of that aspect, I think we're really talking about a general guidelines question.
Also, I guess I'm gonna ask the question again about the administrative adjustment. We use the administrative adjustment as a tool when there are cases in which there is, because of the lot or because of the configuration of the existing dwelling, it can't be, you know, the existing zoning doesn't work. And generally the staff issues a recommendation and they'll say, you know, we believe that we're in support of the administrative adjustment because it means you didn't have to go higher, or you didn't have to whatever. And in this case, we don't have that recommendation. And I would say just sheerly on the basis of the administrative adjustment, I think that it's because that is not what is making this a better project, a project that meets the guidelines more effectively.
In the case of Curtis Park with all the infill, those were typically adjustments for Victorian over height and the things that were technical to the neighborhood, right? Not not justifying the space for an addition.
Okay, so it feels like to me that we're going towards supporting the staff's recommendation, is that correct? So if you nodding heads. Gary? Still up there?
Well, it would be easier for me to deny this than to accept it, but I'm still struggling.
Karen, do you have thoughts?
I mean, I'd say I'm struggling as well, like. Trying to visualize if they weren't asking for an administrative adjustment and they did then have to go out to the side. I think that would be more of an imposition on the existing front view of the house than where it's set back where it is. I don't have as much concern about the piece that Larry mentioned about the front, because I don't think you'll really see it much from the street. I don't care for the portico share piece sticking out to the side. To me, that mass is so much greater than what is directly behind the house. Because I had that concern on another one we reviewed this spring, and they were able to reconfigure that, so it wasn't that mass on the side so much. When it comes to the request for administrative adjustment, I don't know what our history has been of approving those in this district. And if we have already set a precedent for ourselves saying we've been approving administrative adjustments for bulk claim violations before, I don't know that. If we, when any recent ones. Not this district. Thanks.
I would also have a note from the telling here's the administrative adjustment language. It's not just full claims and heights anymore. As of May, like that language is completely changed. Does it create, is it gonna have an adverse impact on the district or the contributing structure? Like, does it help it better fit? And so that's really the language you want to think about.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna guess from Brittany's application and why there's not a recommendation, so she's recommending denial. She's obviously not supportive of the mention.
Okay, I understand this is a tough one. There are a lot of things to consider, but it does look like we're heading toward denial. Correct? Do we hear a motion?
I can make the motion. Madam Chair, I move to deny application number 2023 COA 219 for the addition at 155 Humboldt as per design guidelines 3.25, 3.3, 3.5, 3.8, 3.9, and 3.11. Character defining features for the Country Club Historic District. Presented testimonies, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, let's take a vote then. All in favor, aye?
I,
Ms. Nay? All right, unanimously. All right, on to our next design review project. It's 2023-216 at 249 West Third Avenue in the Baker neighborhood.
Madam Chair, before you start, does staff take pictures of the?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry about that. Thanks, Crystal. Thank you, Crystal. Sorry, thanks for suggesting that. All right, then 2023-COA-216 at 249 West Third Avenue in the Baker neighborhood, and that is Jesse's project.
I'm just going to, share my face on the screen.
Nice face.
Okay, so this is 249 West Third Avenue, constructed in 1887, and this is a contributing building to the Baker Neighborhood Historic District. The applicant is proposing to replace 11 windows on the front, sides, and back of the house. 3 out of the 10, or excuse me, 3 out of the 11 windows are non-historic. The applicant is proposing to replace the windows with aluminum flatwood windows. Pictured here is the south window, or the south windows to be replaced. The applicant will be matching the arched window at the first floor. Exactly, that opening. And as you can see in these photographs, there is significant deferred maintenance on these windows and deterioration on the windows. So pictured here are the windows on the east elevation. Again, here you can see severe deterioration of framing around the windows. as well as different maintenance methods used over the year. I'm really interested in that putty in the lower photograph that the mouse is on currently. But just a lot of deterioration of the existing windows, and it does look like on this upper right hand image here that the mouse is on, that there is some alterations that have happened to that window opening at some point in time. It looks like some filler was added in potentially to that window. And then here's the west elevation. So windows W9 and W10 are called out in the assessment as non-historic windows. You can also see here in this overall image, right above the label that says W9, that there is a jack arch there that shows where a historic window opening was, and then it was filled in at some point. So those Mutton windows, casement windows on the back and the side of the house are non-historic alterations. And they are proposed to be replaced with a new window configuration that better fits the period of the house. And then here's the north elevation. Window W12 at the first floor. It does look like it's in a historic window opening. You can see that it has muntins on it. The assessment called out that sash, the upper sash is non-historic, it was added later. So this window has potentially been Frankenstein, as I'll put it lovingly, and is not an original window to the structure. And they are proposing to replace with double hungs to fit the openings on this side of the building. And then pictured here are windows W4 and W8. That you will recall from my staff report. These are casements on the sides of the house. They are called out, and I did confirm this with the window assessor as historic windows. The applicant is proposing to replace these with double hung windows, changing the configuration from that casement style window. So staff is recommending conditional approval of the application with the condition that W4 and W8 are replaced with windows to match the appearance of the historic windows, citing guidelines 4.14 and 4.19. I have spoken with the property owner, and they have agreed that they would be willing to alter those casement fix for awning so that they better match the existing appearance of the historic windows. But they were unable to get that information to me prior to the deadline.
Okay, just thank you. Staff, any questions for us?
Yeah, just with the casement thing, contemporary casement typically wouldn't be in swing or awning for that matter, but presumably we're just concerned about the visual appearance of the middle bar on the outside, right?
Correct. So, no, these windows, if they were closed, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the operation of them. So if they put in a fix and match the sight lines of the existing window as closely as possible, that would be more sympathetic than putting in a double hung that has a big rail on it. Completely changes the appearance and configuration of that window.
That's what I was thinking.
But an in-swinging, historically an in-swinging casement, the sash would be set further inside the building, the grid sash shadow line than an outswinging casement, so. And I'm not saying that a double hung kind of splits the difference, but there will be a difference in appearance.
A slight difference, yes.
Modern tilted turns, actually.
Staff that also mentioned the difference
Yeah.
too. So there are several options that would better match the existing work with those staffs.
Thank you, Jesse. Taylor, do we have our applicant with us? Is it you guys?
Gary, you should be able to unmute and turn on your camera now. I also have the name Dan Ryan. If Dan Ryan is in the chat, please raise your hand.
He may not be attending.
All right. Gary? Okay, leaving a seance every time I do this. Gary, are you there? Can you hear us? I know what that's like, but I do.
And Gary is the son of the property owner.
Okay, great. Hi, Gary. Gary, if you're, are you muted? Are you muted?
Okay, can anyone hear me now?
Yes, great. Gary, thank you so much. You will have 10 minutes to tell us about your project, and please begin that 10 minutes with your name and your address for records, please.
Yeah, my name is Gary Moorhead. I live at 249 West Third Avenue. And our project is to place some windows that are over the years gotten really deteriorated.
Go right ahead.
Uh,
Tell us about it.
I'm having a hard time here, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. If there's anything else, anything additional that you would like to tell us about this project?
Well, our biggest problem is these two casement windows, because we try to search for someone similar besides the ones that were recommended. I know or when we got one window that it don't show it now, but during this rainy season, it almost fell out from all the rain, just soaking that wood up, making everything soft on the back. So we had to put a lot of foam in it to keep it together to see if, until we figured out what's going on with this project. And these other two windows upstairs, we just, we know we can't use these windows. I know they said they're historical to the house. Just a second.
Go ahead.
They're historical to the house, but we do have issues with them.
Okay. Anything else you want to
Just
tell
hit
us?
red and hang up.
I'm sorry, what?
And I was talking to my mom. I can't hear with the phone ringing.
That's-
So
Anything else you wanted to tell us? Okay. Gary?
So we're just worrying about if we can't get the ones that fit, if we go ahead with the double hangs, or do they going to have to be our bit double hang?
Okay.
Or not double, but the casements, because we're trying to find some good casements that look decent.
All right.
And our contractor's working with us on that now.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Gary? No? Questions?
Well, I can't-
Gary, is there anything else you wanted to tell us before we move on?
Just a second, please. Okay, no, it's just, like I said, we just want to get these windows done, and like I said, I don't have big two issues with those two casement windows.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Gary. Taylor, is there, are there any people that out there virtually that would like to give a public comment?
All right, thank you.
Thank
That's all
you.
I have to say.
No hands. Doesn't look like any hands raised. All righty, then, commissioners, any other questions for Jesse before we deliberate? Like it. All righty, let's deliberate. Any thoughts? Support staff recommendation, not support staff recommendation. You support, Larry supports it.
Yeah, I think so.
Graham does. All right,
It's an easy.
okay. All right, then do I hear a motion from the floor?
Madam Chair, I'll move to conditionally approve application 2023 COA 216 for window replacement at 249 West Third Avenue. Per design guidelines 4.14, 4.19, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the condition that windows W4 and W8 be replaced with new windows to match the historic window.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? George, a second on that. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, the ayes have it unanimously. And Gary, you can work with Jesse, staff person on that project. All right, shall we move on to 2023 COA 220 at 143 Delaware Street in the Baker neighborhood, and that's Crystal.
Alright. Okay, thanks, Julie. Jesse, the presentation. Are you going to control the slides or?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, that's fine. So this application is for phase 2 design details for a new tandem house, single family residence on an existing zone lot with a primary structure at 143 Delaware Street, which has also recently been addressed to 430 West 2nd Avenue in the Baker Neighborhood Historic District. The new tandem house will be located at the rear of the zone lot and face onto West 2nd Avenue with access to the rear with a 1-car attached garage, and that'll be accessed from the alley. On the left, you can see the vacant part of the lot for the new house, and on the right is the site plan showing the new structure fronting onto West 2nd Avenue with garage access, like I said, from the alley. So here is the front elevation and west elevation. The west elevation is the one facing the alley. The facade reflects typical historic proportions and uses horizontal articulation with the simple parapet at the roof line and with lintels and sills at the windows. The house incorporates a 1-story front porch and individual and paired windows at similar proportions to other homes found within the district. The overall height has slightly bumped up to 23 feet 6 inches. Nearby structures on the same block face as this proposed house stand at varying heights of 17 feet and 20 feet 11 inches. The new home will largely be clad in a summit brick in the color thistledown with a stacked bond pattern. And the attached garage portion at the rear of the structure will be clad in a James Hardie smooth lap siding with a 4-inch reveal. All windows will be Sierra Pacific metal clad wood windows, and the front door will be a wood door with a 3/4 light. So here are the side and rear elevations of the structure, which also show the proposed flat roof form like other Italianate structures found within the district. At the east elevation are 2 sets of French doors to a side yard. Staff did notice that the elevations call out a precast concrete sill for the windows, while the windows schedule seen at the bottom calls out a sloped masonry sill for the windows. So staff would like the applicant to clarify which is proposed on the final plans. Staff has no preference. Next slide. Here you can see the window details on the left and the wall sections on the right. The wall sections show the details for the simple front porch as well as egress window wells. The window details do not currently show the required 2-inch inset for windows, so staff has added a condition that this be corrected prior to final approval. Next. So here are the proposed materials for the house. The structure uses a simple combination of materials that fits within the context of the district. The change in brick pattern and a change from that typical red color helps to differentiate the structure and make it a more contemporary version of the Italianate style. And then finally, here's some isometric views at the left and a color version of the structure at the bottom right. The new 2-story modern Italianate structure is characteristic of the districts, matches historic proportions. Therefore, staff is recommending approval with 2 conditions. One, that the window sills should be clarified in the plans to be either concrete sills or masonry sills. And 2, to show all windows with a minimum 2-inch inset in the plans.
Crystal, thank you. Commissioners, any questions from Crystal? No? Okay, great. Applicants, are the applicants out there virtually waiting for us?
Should be Dean.
Dean, you should be able to unmute and turn your camera on now.
Hello, Dean? Hello, Dean? Hi. Dean,
Hi, yeah, sorry, it took me a second to unmute, yeah.
No, that's totally okay, I understand it. Dean, welcome, you have 10 minutes to tell us about your project, and you can begin that 10 minutes, please, with your name and your address.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Dean Ritchie, 5180 Vallejo Street. And I think the most interesting thing about this particular site is everything, as we look at this front elevation, everything to the right and then down Alade is this commercial district. So, and then everything to the left is residential. So we, early on, it made more sense for us to relate to that commercial side of things. But because we're relating to these historic commercial structures and putting a single family house in it, we sort of realized early on that we wanted to be careful not to, copy a storefront and put a house in that. That's what most of those houses are now. Those commercial storefronts have been converted to residential, but there's sort of a truth to that story that we don't have. So we really wanted to relate to that commercial side, but also distinguish it. And I think through the details and some going a little bit more contemporary with those, it made it easier for us to do that. We've got those two planters as you come up the steps to the front porch. I think that form is pretty common, usually those masonry wings with a stone cap, but that idea of, those sort of arms reaching out to the street is pretty consistent and framing that entry to the porch. Porch is very simple. With some contemporary detailing, and then again, the parapet is very simple. And I think those are sort of on the contemporary side. And then, those sort of hopefully balance with the, we would do precast sills, sorry about that inconsistency, and then precast headers. And then, the scale of the siding and the trim and the casing are much more historic. So we tried not to go too far one way or the other, but sort of straddle that line. And again, the colors, tried to do that same thing. It's all of those storefronts are red brick. We think this kind of works with that, and it is, they're muted tones. I don't think they'll jump out, but they're also tones or a color palette that would maybe be consistent with a house built in 2023. So that was kind of the balance we were looking for. We are, just to clarify, we are also looking for an AA on that front elevation. We talked about that at phase one, and it's just all those commercial buildings mass towards the street. So on the street side bulk plane, we do have a bulk plane violation there, but we're actually set back a little bit further than the other commercial ones. So we tried to kind of balance that as much as we could. But that's sort of where I think that house wants to sit in that type to work with that commercial. So that's really all I've got, unless you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Dean, thank you. Commissioners, questions for Dean?
Got a couple.
Barry, okay.
I guess regarding the window headers and sills, with those precast sills, are you planning to have like a kind of color match to the brick or something contrasting? And then you said precast headers, but I believe the detail shows like a setback wood header.
Sorry for that confusion. We went back and forth on that, and honestly, if I don't remember where we landed, I thought Crystal had said that we had precast header, so I just assumed that's where we landed. And maybe I misunderstood, but so sorry. Do you have a preference? I think, and again, sorry for the inconsistency. I really liked that recessed wood header painted that dark color and a precast sill. So if we could clarify that would, again, sorry for the inconsistency there.
Barry, did you have another question? No? Okay. Anybody else have a question for her? Okay, Dean, thank you very much. It sounds like you're done with your questions and your presentation. Taylor, do we have anybody that might like to give a public comment on this project?
No hands raised.
Doesn't look like.
Wait, I'm sorry, one just popped up.
Okay.
David, you can go ahead and unmute now.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, David. You've got 2 minutes to give your comments. Please start with your name and address, please.
My name is Dave Renson. Address is 3286 South Marion Street, Englewood, Colorado. I'll be quick. I think this project looks great, so I'm glad to see other designs out there doing stuff like this. I'm actually supposed to be here for one of the projects on the consent agenda that I think got skipped over, so I just wanted to ask if we're still on schedule for today. Thank you.
I totally did not get the last part of your query.
I'm asking, I'm here to represent another project that was on the consent agenda that's shown higher up that got skipped over. So I just wanted to check if we're still going to be on this call.
We skip over or something?
No, we took something off consent.
No, we took something off consent. We took, but then it was yeah, what's the address?
2724 Curtis Street. Was that moved?
Yeah, that was approved. So that was approved as part of the consent agenda, so you're good to go on that.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry about that. I thought we had to still talk about it.
It's all right. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Crystal, did you have any additional comments? No? Okay, good. Excellent. All right. Commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Well, since I know, I just started talking about, since I asked the question about the headers. I mean, I agree with the applicant. I like that kind of setback with header detail. I think it's kind of contemporary, but still, and it kind of emphasizes the shadow, the window recess, and precast sills seem fine. I think the only other thought that I had on this was, and it looks like it's just a drafting thing, is kind of making sure construction to modularly line up bricks and not have little slivers. As they're still sort of shown in some spots. Yeah, that's for you, Ann.
And draws are bricks.
Yeah, do you want to elaborate? Larry's thought. Did you have any comments?
No, I think this project does a really great job of fitting the guidelines, and I would also support the administrative adjustment because I think the form of the project is appropriate to the neighborhood and appropriate scale to the existing.
And even more so, it's not just appropriate to the neighborhood, but its immediate context is all the storefronts. Having been a former Baker resident, I used to walk down here all the time. So
I totally agree.
I support the staff's recommendation.
Great. Any other comments? Do I hear a motion? George.
Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve, I think this will be restricted. Application 2023-COA-220 for the design details of the proposed infrastructure at 143 Delaware Street. As per presented testimony, submitted documentation guidelines 4.3, 4.5, 4.7, 4.8. The Baker neighborhood character defining features, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report with the following condition. Windowsill should be clarified in the plans as to concrete sills or masonry sills and show all windows with a minimum 2-inch inset plans.
George, thank you. Second.
I'll second, but I think there's a friendly amendment coming,
Okay.
if I'm reading. Correctly. And
Okay,
if not,
yes.
it may just be the distinction of the precast sill versus precast floor masonry.
Okay.
Is that right?
So, all right, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there a friendly amendment on the floor?
Also the administrative adjustment, which I'm trying to find some language for.
You already approved the AA.
Yeah, A is different, yeah. But good on you. for thinking.
Yes, I thought the friendly amendment also had to do with the window head. The clarification on the window head, not just the sill.
That's per plan. I think it was noted as the recessed wood. So it was just mentioned.
Okay, so I'm confused now. What is the friendly amendment?
There's not.
There is not, there's no. friendly amendment. All right. Seconded as presented, already, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay? All right, it's unanimously approved, conditionally approved. Thank you very much. All right, commissioners, normally we take a break around 3 o'clock, but we only have one more project before us.
And I don't have to leave, like,
Yeah, Darren's gonna have to leave.
I don't have to.
Oh, you don't have to?
No, I,
Okay. All right. Do you want us to keep going or take a break or?
Let's finish it up.
Let's do it, yeah.
Let's do it. All righty then, gentlemen,
Through the
in
ball.
long past.
What
Twenty
happens if-
twenty-three COA 214 is 415 Park Street in the Alamo Placida District. And I'm guessing it's Jesse that's talking to us about that. All right.
So this is 415 Clarkson Street, Let's talk today. Today we're reviewing design details for the new single-family residential home in Alamo Placida Historic District. A new concrete walkway will connect the home to the sidewalk, AC unit, and a walkway to the garage will be located on the north side of the property at the rear. And a new privacy fence will be constructed. The massive form, or the mass form and context submittal was approved by the commission on April 18th of this year. Since that meeting, the applicant studied the existing garage and determined that it was not functional and will also need to be demolished. Garages are not contributing structures to the Alamo Placida Historic District. New garage, the new garage is placed behind the primary structure. Is placed behind the primary structure. And both will have equal forms on them. So the primary and the garage structure will be equal to this one. Okay. Since the mass form and context approval, the applicant has made the following adjustments to the design and to the front facade. They've adjusted the transom from portions from 72-inch by 24-inch down to 72-inch by 21-inch. They've added additional trim and brick detailing to the gable facade and transitioning between brick and gable base material on the front facade. And they've revised the proportions and placement in the wall of the corner windows to align with the other second floor windows. The front facade will be clad in salvaged spiral brick from the original home, with brown shingles in the gable face and straight edge shingles on the recessed massing. While shingles are typically used as primary building materials in Alamo Placida, the material is compatible with the surrounding context and helps to distinguish the building as new and provides texture to the facade, providing visual interest similar to how the brick provides texture and visual interest. Shingles are proposed to have a 7-inch reveal. Shingle reveal, according to our guidelines, should be limited to 4 to 6 inches. All windows and transoms are fiberglass composite and with a wood front door. So since the mass form and context approval, the applicant has made the following adjustments to the design on the north facade. So they've revised the number of openings on the north elevation from the corner window down to one bay of windows. They've revised the number of awning windows on the north elevation from 3 to 4. And that is the adjustments they've made. So the north elevation will be clad in a straight edge shingle. The south elevation will be clad in a spiral brick, returning back from the front facade and then transitioning into a straight edge shingle. This elevation will have a sliding glass door, which is not typically allowed, but the portion of the facade, this portion of the facade is recessed and only visible from public right of way. And then since the mass form and context approval, the applicant has made the following adjustments to the design of the rear facade. They've added an additional trim and detailing in the rear gable face. The rear facade will be clad in straight edge shingles with brown shingles in the gable face. All shingles and trim are smooth finish fiber cement products. And then here a detailed section showing the brick will be a standard size brick And all windows, in all cladding materials will be recessed into the wall plate. And then finally here, the garage is a simple gable roof structure with a total height of 17 feet. The garage would be clad in fiber cement, straight edge shingles. And staff are recommending conditional approval of this application. The condition being that the shingle reveal be 6 inches rather than 7 inches.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Any questions for Steph? No? All righty, well, I know the applicants are here. Do we want them to come over here or?
Yes.
Yeah. Special table over here, thank you. And you've heard the routine. You've got 10 minutes to tell us about the project, and please begin that 10 with your name and your address.
Sure.
You're looking track of the time, so you.
Okay. All right. Hello. My name is Aaron Hodgen, and I live at 640 Race Street in the 7th Avenue Historic District. We'd like to thank the commission for their feedback before. We think each time we've been here, we've made improvements in the project. Originally, the house was hit by a large tree, and so we received approval for demolition of that. Unfortunately, it's difficult to save. So we're in this process of a new home. The changes which were referenced before, we adjusted the transom size to make it less prominent on the facade. And the corner windows, we simplified those down to, we had 2 on the north and 1 on the east front. We, on suggestions, simplified that to 1 and 1. And in general, our design intention is to create a kind of the nested gable form that's typical of the neighborhood, but create a simplified contemporary version of that so that it's fitting in the context and complementary of the context, and yet of our time, and showing that it's a new construction. At the same time, we intend to salvage the face brick from the existing house, clean that and use that for the brick veneer, full brick veneer on the front portion of the house. The original structure was a 1-bedroom home, so there's a limited amount of brick, but we've with the garage and the home itself, we feel like there's plenty of brick with extra to be able to rebuild the porch and the main facade. And we like that as a way to pull on the original context of that, the original structure. And then the intention then is to utilize shingle, both decorative half round shingle and straight edge shingle siding, which is contextual in the neighborhood. And we're utilizing that both for the gable ends and then also wrapping that around the building, so that we simplify the amount of materials on the project. One of the, in our initial mass and scale application, we wanted some comment on the amount of materials. We had 3 materials in that one, and so we've simplified that down to the 2 materials as you see here, with a little bit of decorative detail added to the front gable facade. And since the commission or staff has suggested the siding to be a 4 or 6 inch reveal on the shingle siding, we have subsequently researched the product that we have intending to use, cement board shingle, and that can be installed with that 6 inch reveal. There's also a new product, same company, that has a 5 inch reveal. I don't know if that's available, but I'm confident that we can install with this 6-inch reveal with a given material. So we're happy with that suggestion and happy to accommodate those suggestions. And I think we've articulated and created a little more detail with the style of this nested gable to have that delineation between the brick and the upper gable structure. We've provided a detail there with trim and a row-lock brick that I think is compatible from the suggestions of the neighborhood, other structures as well. So that's all I have for now.
Okay.
Paul, did you want to say anything?
Want to say it again? Yeah, you've got 5 minutes and 17 seconds. And start with the name of the guest.
My name is Paul Lorenz. I live at 1735 South Clarkson Street. This has been a long time house for our family. Since 1931, we've been here. It wasn't planned that a tree fall on the house. You know, we believe that we've created a nice plan for the neighborhood. That's respectable to the neighborhood, and then also we did reach out to the landmark district after it did happen, just so that we proceeded the correct way of rebuilding the house. It's a considerable cost to us. I mean, it's something that we weren't planning on. We do have insurance, but a lot of this is stuff coming out of pocket too. So it's just that we don't have the big budget that's, but we want to do it right. And we want to make the neighborhood look good. So, but we just hope and get approval for this and kind of get the house cleaned up and the neighborhood back together, and make it nice and safe too. That's the concern too, is the safety of the unit there.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. Well, Commissioners, do you have any questions? Paul or Aaron? Okay, all right, great. Thanks for your participation. Are there any people in the public that would like to comment? Hands raised, no hands raised, does not look like it. Great, thank you very much, Taylor.
There is one hand raised, but it is a name that's on the application.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see.
Okay.
Dale, you should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello. Yeah, we can, are you, Dan, are you part of the application team?
Yeah, I'm here with Ralph Lorenz, the owner of the house. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, the public comment, we can't have you give public comment. You're actually part of the applicant team if you're the owner of the house, so.
They're
Part of them.
Do they have time left?
We do have time left. I think there was about 4 minutes left. All right, let's go ahead and give you your 2 minutes. I think we had at least 2 minutes. So if you want to go ahead and tell us about your project. And start with your names and addresses, please.
This is going to be Ralph Lorenz, 3132 South Dahlia Street, Denver.
Okay.
Hello, yes, I'm the owner of the building. And we unfortunately had a tree problem with the next door neighbor. It fell and damaged the house to a degree where it was shifting off the foundation. We hadn't planned on putting any drastic new structures in, but with what happened is couldn't be helped evidently. So at this point, we hope that we can get together here and put a new nice structure up. Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioners, any questions? No? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. We will go ahead, if there are any questions for staff or the applicants, we'll go ahead and go into deliberation. Commissioners, what are your thoughts on this project?
This project has certainly been a journey from
It has been a
we
journey.
started, and I have appreciated working with these applicants the whole time of how willing they were for input and feedback and discussion from, you know, the first difficult meeting to talk about demolition, and we all decided that was the best route. So I'm in support of the staff's recommendation on this, and I really hope the family good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarah, anybody have any other thoughts? Yeah, Gary agrees. George?
I think I'll second Aaron's thing. It's been a long, strange trip, but, and our house was hit by a tree too, so I know the feeling, but, yes, I think it's a well done and presented project, and their willingness to move on the shingles is just fine. So I see nothing in the way of approving this, going with staff recommendation.
Any other thoughts, commissioners? Other than neighbors need to take care of their trees. I've been there too. All right, then, do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move to conditionally approve application 2023-COA-214 for phase 2 design details at 415 Clarkson Street per design guidelines 4.3 through 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.16, 4.18 through 4.20. Character defining features for the Alamo Placita Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report, with the condition that the half-round shingles and straight edge shingles have an exposure of 4 to 6 inches. Or documentation of larger exposures found in the surrounding context to be provided.
Thank you. And Gary has seconded. All in favor, aye? Opposed, nay? All right, you're on your way. Thank you very much, and best of luck to you. All right, staff, are there any business items? There are no business items, any discussion items? No? All right, then I will close the meeting. It's I guess it's 3:04 p.m. on June 20th. The meeting is adjourned. And since we're adjourned, I will let y'all know that I will see you in August.